All right. Hello, and welcome back to I'll Have What She's Having. Today, we're talking about something that feels incredibly alive and relevant right now: embodied leadership. And when most people hear the word leadership, they tend to think about like boardrooms and strategy and people in like positions of authority. But like I think we're all coming around to the fact that like leadership is so much more than that. And embodied leadership asks a much deeper question, which is how do you truly lead your life, right? Like how do you lead from your body, from your values, from your intuition? And like we are all leaders. Like you don't have to be in a position of power to lead and to make an influence in this world. And because so many of us have been disconnected from some of these sources of power and leadership and embodiment, we end up in a really cool discussion about like how to find our way back. And so today we're talking to the founders of SoulQuest, which is a 14-day transformational leadership initiation through the wild landscapes of South Africa. And it's really designed as this modern rite of passage. So we combine adventure and cultural immersion and service and embodiment practices and this deep inner work. And so really it's the willingness to listen to what makes us feel alive. And so, like, as the participants will move through different environments, it kind of like also mirrors the chakra system. So, very excited to talk about that and how each landscape invites this deeper exploration and level of the self, right? We get to ask, like, what are the core values? Like, what are our core values that we're living by? What truly matters to me? What kind of life am I here to lead? And what does it take to live in integrity with that vision?
Yeah, so I am Leah and I've been on this little journey, I guess, of my own through traveling different landscapes around the world after leaving Australia, where I was living for 9 years. And in that process, I kind of went through this journey of discovery and this whole liminal space of leaving behind what I was and everything I created there and going into this space of really not knowing and then trying to discover who I was becoming. And I realized that that is very much an initiation. So SoulQuest is kind of born out of this travel experience and this transformation that I went through and the desire to go through these experiences with other like-minded leaders who are also wanting to create impact in the world.
Beautiful. All right. Thank you. And Mick, would you be able to introduce yourself as well?
Of course, my name is Mikhael. I'm a South African who has had the incredible life journey to touch the far-flung corners of this incredible country of ours, which is just so rich culturally. 11 language groups across all different kinds of landscapes, with a cultural history that positions the country as in some ways, a beacon of what's possible with tolerance, forgiveness, with adopting a future vision that is inclusive and that opens the doorway to possibility where we can step out of the deep history, not ignoring it, not forgetting it, but allowing ourselves to dream a new dream together and move into that dream together. And so when the opportunity came to work with Leah and her idea to use the country's rich spiritual lineages as spaces to explore, I was very excited to share what this country has to offer. And so getting out of the city and getting to the far-flung corners is a rich potential. And for me, as someone who's gone on all kinds of journeys of my own, I know that you just have to open the door. You just have to step your foot outside. As J.R. Tolkien said, you need to watch your feet, Frodo, because you step outside your door, and if you're not careful, you'll never know where it'll be swept off to. So this is a opportunity to sweep people off their feet and immerse ourselves in South Africa and all of the goodness it has to offer.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love including a Tolkien quote in there. Like, of course, it just fills me with all the warm bubblies of like, yes, we're going on an adventure. Oh, so if you were to come up to somebody who'd never heard of SoulQuest before, never heard of it, what would you say? What would you say to them?
I think you summed it up so beautifully, Kris, with kind of explaining that it's it's an experience. Well, it's really an initiation, I guess, into alignment and personal leadership. And in your explanation, that it really does mirror the chakra system. So we've kind of chosen each of these locations to really travel through environments, and as we immerse ourselves in these cultures and the nature through community service work and all these other personal practices that are interwoven in, then we can really explore these deeper questions of who we are and like what impact we want to create in the world. So this journey is really meant to remind us of what we're made of. um, and I think that kind of brings in a little bit of the warrior essence that you were talking about. The archetype of the warrior is what we're kind of working with to help facilitate that process of the initiation and moving through that space, because it's not so much as like the representation of a fighter, but more so someone that stands as integrity and has devotion and discipline in order to stand for what they believe in, and really stand for who they are, and hopefully a service that's greater than themselves.
Yeah, I really love that. Like a warrior being somebody who stands up for what they believe in and fights for what's right. Like that is such a
Right.
beautiful, like different definition of a warrior. Yeah.
Yeah, think about the warrior as almost like a titan or a soldier or something like that, where there's like so much more depth and honor and integrity to what the warrior represents. And I think it's a really beautiful archetype to work with, when it in this process of like really taking ownership of your personal, um, yeah, integrity and of your life.
Yeah. And so for anyone who doesn't like really connect with archetypes or know too much about archetypes, how would you describe like what does it mean to work with an archetype?
So I think
Archetypes have been with us forever. As long as we've told stories, we've found the archetypes in the stories, right? The hero, the villain, the child. These are things that are just innate in our human expression as individuals and as the collective, and we kind of aggregate them and recognize a type, either an archetypal story or the archetypal characters in the story. And Jung, for example, did a lot of work with the different kinds of archetypes that typically show up in the human experience. And he looked into what it meant to express as an archetype. So express part of your, for example, masculinity through the four masculine archetypes, and what those archetypes look like when they're expressing healthily versus what happens when they're expressing in a sense that's not so healthy. So a great example is a king. A king is sitting on his throne. A king is of service to his people. A good king doesn't go to war nonchalantly. A good king only goes to battle when it's absolutely required and in defense, as opposed to the tyrant king. The tyrant king is self-serving. The tyrant king doesn't care for the people or their needs. It's power that he seeks. Or another example of an errant king might be the absent king, the king who's not taking responsibility, who's not stepping up and looking after lands. And so it's really useful because we're all unique, but we all express these archetypal mm, parts of ourselves over the course of our life. And they're very useful because they give us something to frame where we are currently and maybe where we hope to be expressing in differently. And so, yeah, they're useful because in some way we get to recognize patterns that are just beyond ourselves, and we get to step out of our little me bubble and see ourselves as something part of a bigger story.
Add in like this element of being able to almost like play with personalities. I like where it's like you can kind of see yourself from a different lens. One thing that brings up is the idea that, you know, as different civilizations all like know each other, there's been this like unveiling of the fact that all these different places which never came in contact, right? Like pre-contact early civilizations of humans, and they all came up with the same archetypes and they all had the same sort of like patterns emerge in humanity. And so like I feel like that's another way to put it, is like it's a pattern of humanity and a pattern in a way that like humans show up to one another. So what does a rite of passage mean to you?
I think this is the question we're grappling with as humanity at the moment, and particularly the West. I think we're asking ourselves, what is a rite of passage? What does it mean? And were we too quick to write those rites of passage off as primitive, as superstitious, right? Yet these transitions that we all experience, from children into adulthood, from girls into women and boys into men, and all the other experiences that people go through, they're markers of time. Yet we tend to just pass over them without giving them their due. And initiation is something that it's like a container that's opened for that recognition of change, of a changing of the season, and to create a moment in time and space where that recognition becomes the focus. And we can allow the transformation that is already happening, that will always be ongoing as seasons always change. Within this initiatory container, we can allow the fullness of that transformation to be experienced. And so whenever you do anything, just placing a little bit of attention on it changes what you're doing completely. And the more intentional, the more devoted you are, the more love you put into what you're doing, the more transformative the outcome. And so rites of passage or initiations or spaces in time, place dedicated for that transformation to take place and filled with moments, tools, encounters that aid the shift that's taking place. And so SoulQuest is a container for that transformation that happens across landscapes, the intention of encountering experiences and people that will inevitably result in some change. And because we're holding that space with great intention, both as facilitators as well as the participants, it's a sure thing that that the transformative potential of that time and space will be amplified massively.
I think initiation can kind of be looked at as like a symbolic death of the identities and expectations that we've been carrying, and really coming back with like a return with a new level of awareness and responsibility. So essentially, SoulQuest is, I would say, it's like a modern initiation. I feel like these old practices, these old traditions of initiation that was, um, with our ancestors or in an older tribe, it was about sending somebody away to be initiated from, let's say, adolescence into manhood or adulthood. Um, so it kind of involves that stepping away from your normal life and from what you were, and going through this journey of reflection and challenge. You're kind of being in this space that feels overwhelming and a bit discombobulating, and then returning with this greater clarity for how you want to contribute in your society as it at work and relationships.
Yeah, I really love that. I love that, like you're right. We don't have enough initiation processes,
Mm.
right? And like I know some people locally in my community here in Vancouver that also have the same sort of process where it's like, how are we seeing, especially the phase from adolescence to adulthood, and like what does that actually mean? And like I think we find a lot of us still being adolescents far into our 20s because we haven't gone through that rite or ritual or passage or
Yeah.
initiation.
There's actually this
And
quote by
so like
Francis Weller that's he talks about initiation. It's a beautiful five-part series, but he says we're all just enraged adolescents running around in adult bodies. Like we haven't had the process yet to really come into understanding what it takes to be an adult. And in modern society, our initiations are like going to university and then getting a job and getting promoted, and it's very egocentric and individualistic and self-serving. Whereas actually other traditions, like more traditional initiation, is more about going away to come back as a better participant in the community and in your society. And so it's not just for yourself; it's actually for the whole.
mhm. Yeah, I love that. So talk to me about that community aspect then, because it is a huge part of like we want to serve our community, we want to lead in our communities, we want to become better humans so that we can serve others, right? So how does the community piece tie in?
I think we're all just kind of I think communities have really started forming a lot recently. Like communities about all sorts of different things. And it's really beautiful to see people connecting and bigger groups forming. But I think fundamentally people don't actually understand what it means to be in community the same way that we did back then. And actually the level of care and connection that goes into community. One of the main things that I wanted to cultivate in SoulQuest and what I realized in my travels was like going around and when you travel when you're younger and you just connect with people easily and you have a night out and you're like, great. And then you never really speak to them again. I felt this is just like this shallow level of traveling. Like I really wanted to create like a global community of people that are like-minded and wanting to create impact and being able to connect with each other and go through this epic experience and remain in community after that or go back to their communities. But ultimately being able to have a deeper understanding of what it means to be vulnerable, what it means to have integrity and to be open and honest and in within a container of community. So I think those are some of the things that are kind of just underlying as the essence of what it is to be on a soul quest. And hopefully those are the textures of your relationships that you bring back home.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's the community aspect in the group itself that travels. And then what about the impact that it has and what role does it play in the development of the participants when we interact with like local communities?
I
Yeah,
think
maybe Mick,
there's
if you want to speak to Bulungula, I think that'd be a really cool place to integrate that.
yeah, absolutely. So we've been intentional around, well, been exceptionally intentional around where the voyage goes, where we stop, where we engage with the landscape and the people. And we've mapped how that relates to the different chakras. And there's no better place, I think, to open up the heart chakra than in the Transkei, which is a very rural strip of coastline on the east coast of South Africa, which even to this day is very difficult to reach. Uh, Electricity and running water only reached there very recently, as did the internet. And the people there have a deep knowing of community that we in the cities here in Babylon have forgotten. And my encounters with the communities there and my last visits really, it was so easy to open your heart when you're surrounded by people whose hearts are so open, so inviting. And it's like stepping into this space that's filled with warm bubbles. It's a bubble bath of humanity, and it helps to shed the layers of separation that we put up in the city. And the community there, um, though they have little in resources, they are rich in their humanity. And I think the biggest impact for anyone who has the pleasure of being there is not only taking in the breathtaking landscapes, the wild coastline, uh, the rich marine life, but is experiencing what it means to live in a community. And when you speak to them and engage, you realize that community, we have a view that community is sort of homogenous. We tend to orientate ourselves around like-minded people in our modern communities. We isolate ourselves in these bubbles and call those community. But what we hear from those who are working in community in Bulungula, this tiny village we'll be visiting, is that a real community is made up of extremely diverse people, people who have extremely different views. And being in community is about realizing that we have to move forward together despite differences. And one of the things that makes that possible um, is ensuring that there's a level of grace. Right? We view what's happening and what we're doing collectively with grace, and we therefore are able to offer tolerance to the viewpoints of others, the perspectives, the different life paths and choices. And it's funny because I think in the West, tolerance became a bit of a dirty word. You don't have to tolerate that. You shouldn't stand for that. Don't tolerate that nonsense. And personally, I want to make tolerance sexy again. It's like, hang on, we can be so different. We can have different views. And yet we can also still find a story that we're telling together about where we're going. And we can reconcile ourselves in the act of making that real together. And South Africa is an example of that, though still fraught with challenges. This idea of reconciliation was key to the notion of the Rainbow Nation. For those who don't know, the Rainbow Nation was the unifying story that came after the story of apartheid, the story that just segregated and bred hatred and division. The new unifying story that was introduced by one of the world's most profound leaders, Nelson Mandela, was offered after 27 years spent on Robben Island in jail. He came out not with hate or ideas of revenge, but only of reconciliation and of tolerance. And it was through his vision for a rainbow nation that we could move forward together. And it's that level of inspiring leadership that I think is possible when you act from the heart and you act in service.
Thank you. Yeah, that's such a beautiful story to share, and it really makes me think about, like, just like you said, the idea that, like, I think I live in such a rich community here in Vancouver, but the truth is that they're all the like-minded beings that I've collected. I don't have to work with or interface with people who have such different beliefs as me very often. And you're right, like, that is a whole new level of learning, and, like, being able to witness that, being able to even be a part of it, step into that is invaluable teaching for sure.
And I think that
And
brings
so
like to
what do you
light
think
this whole idea that SoulQuest is not something that you learn in a classroom. It's not like us teaching leadership. It's embodied leadership. It's like we're actually going into these places and learning from a country that has been through such a rich history, from people that have been through these things, and really discovering for ourselves what that actually means. And that's something that you can't be taught in a workshop, or it's a very practical way to go through it and discover it for yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. And actually, it brings up the thought, like, I just finished a Vipassana meditation course, and one of the things that really stuck with me was the way he's talking about, like, the teacher Goenka is talking about, well, okay, you can listen to somebody else and learn something. You can have, like, the understanding yourself, but then the true wisdom comes from experiential knowledge, right? Like, you have to experience it yourself. So that's really the essence of this, right? Is like, we're not going to write these things down. You're not going to have notes at the end of this necessarily. You're
Mm,
just going to have an embodied knowledge, inner wisdom, the
mm,
experiential knowledge of what leadership means. So I think that's a really beautiful segue into, like, what is embodied leadership? Like, what does that truly mean? Because I know it's mentioned a lot, and that's one of the outcomes. And I think this does describe it, but I'm curious what it means to you and what are the most impactful ways that you've experienced embodied leadership in the past?
Yeah, I think to me, embodied leadership, I mean, obviously we have these notions of what leadership is in the office space, and sometimes we get that mixed up with like management versus leadership. And, it's like the strategy and, kind of managing others and all that kind of stuff. But actually, embodied leadership to me is actually it's starting with this sense of alignment and coming home to who you are and what actually it is that you're wanting to lead. So when we have a very clear vision of the truth that we stand for, and cultivate a vision that is authentic to us. I mean, for me anyway, is that's when you engage people that want to join you on your mission, on your vision, is when you're leading from this place of like truly embracing the vision that you are um, trying to engage people to follow. And I think it's also about living and breathing the essence of that vision, um, because you've been there, you've done that, you're walking the path. It's not just some ideal that we're trying to obtain.
There's something there about the difference between a world in which leadership is seen as someone who sits at the top or at the
Mm.
front and is pulling everyone towards their goal, maybe something that really defined the world we live in, the modern world in so many ways, that notion that someone at the top will be pulling us forward, uh, versus servant leadership, where the leader is really behind, supporting, and carrying weight and being the Sherpa of this becoming. And so, how best can one be a servant leader? This is something that has to be intuited. You have to be able to take any moment and recognize how that moment can be best served. What is it that that moment is asking for? Because it's not the same as being charismatic and loud and brash or fighting for your idea. No, that's all off the table if we're talking servant leadership. This is really being in service of something much greater. And so who do you have to be as an individual to allow that level of intuition, to allow that level of knowingness in the moment? Well, you have to be someone who's aligned, who's fully aligned. And this is the space we've been exploring. What does that mean to be in alignment? To have all the aspects of your own being such that you act from a place not of fear, but a place of um, motivation, an internal motivation, a sense of possibility, and a peace, a deep peace. And these are the kind of things that can only be experienced somatically, can only be experienced in the body. And so, there's a beautiful mm, synergy in the group who's coming together to facilitate, because there's the need for each of these aspects of our beings to be nourished. And to have this conversation with you today, Kris, really opens a door to explore what does that mean at the sacral level. Like, what is it there that needs to be in alignment in order that the rest of our being can flourish thematically?
Hmm.
So maybe
Yeah.
you throw the question back to you. What does embodied leadership mean for you, and how does that show up in the space you work with?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for asking. The yes, I guess surprise, I will be a guest facilitator on this journey. Um, and which is why I'm so passionate about bringing you guys here and having this conversation. And I think a lot of people might be thinking along the lines of like, "But yes, but what does this have to do with sexuality? And what does this have to do with pleasure? And why are we talking about leadership?" And I love that, like, being in service to others, like, really transforming the leadership narrative from the person at the top who's loudest, who's charismatic, to the person who's showing up and saying, "What does this moment need?" And, like, I love to advocate for the fact that, like, the way you show up in sexual experiences is the way you show up in life. And the same thing goes for leadership. Like, leadership is not about, like, necessarily leading. Like, everybody can step up and be a leader in certain moments, and it's about finding, yeah, the way to navigate the world that allows you to, like, offer and yeah, just really be of service to others. And so when it like, you guys touched on, like, the feeling of alignment and, like, being aligned with yourself, being aligned with the deeper parts of who you are, being aligned on each level of your chakra system allows you to lead from a place of surrender, right? Like, you're surrendering to the moment, you're surrendering to your, like, the needs of the others around you. And, like, one of the greatest things that we learn from sex is surrender. And that is where we can, like, surrender into our pleasure, surrender into that deep juiciness of the sacral chakra, of those, like, that like life force energy. And you really find what's, like, what you can bring out into the world. So there's multiple different reasons why I think pleasure is so important for leadership, and why leadership is so important for pleasure and the other way around. But it's really about, one, cultivating this, like, really powerful life force, right? That sexual energy. And then two, like, really aligning with your desires, really aligning with, like, this is what I want. And oh, yeah, I feel like I just talked myself in a circle there, but
There's an
hopefully some of
interesting
that made
thing
sense.
about sexuality actually, because it can go both ways, right? Like you can use it so powerfully to harness this energy, this leadership energy, and to really and I think maybe that even comes out when you're in your sexual power, when you're without this shame and this hiding, and you're, it kind of becomes this essence that is that charismatic part of leadership. I think naturally sometimes they really do develop it. But there's also the flip side where people I've heard have actually with abstained from sex for like 6 months to a year or whatever, and, like, seeing what they produce as a result with the energy that, like, goes from their sexual drive into, like, the leadership drive is quite amazing. So there actually is so much power, whether it's used or withheld in the sexual energy in that sacral space to be harnessed.
Yeah, and I think, like, there is a really large difference depending on, um, what tools you're working with. And by that I mean, like, your genitals and your gender and your sex, because, like, it's all about not having that sexual energy leave your body, right? So non-ejaculatory, the orgasms and stuff like that. And with a woman's body and a female oriented body, you can kind of use that and control that energy in a different way to, again, yeah, like, harness it for your creative projects and stuff like that. Absolutely. So I'm excited to add that to the journey, and add that to that piece of, like, okay, and how do we lead from this space, and how do we use this energy to fuel the rest of our
Mm.
experience?
It's like if
Um,
we could bottle up our
yeah,
sexual energy and put it into a little leadership potion.
totally. That's what I do every day. That's that's basically how
I'll
I
have
start
what
my
she's
mornings.
having.
I mean,
Her sexual energy.
yeah, absolutely. Oh, and so and I guess this is what that means in terms of alignment, right? Like, that you're fully aligned with all the different parts of you. You're moving towards something that makes sense to you. But do you have anything else to add in terms of, like, what does alignment mean in, like, practical terms? And, like, why do we think so many people are feeling disconnected or misaligned in their lives right now?
I think there's a few factors, and one of which, I mean, if we don't actually understand what it is that is our soul's imprint, our soul's, everyone's unique into like what actually drives them, like these core, your authentic code, which is the pillars that make us aligned in how we are, then how, like we might be taking on the values and the expectations and all of societal's beliefs and values. And so we kind of misinterpret them as our own. So we might be going after the wrong things in life, think these goals that aren't aligned to our truest essence. But then the other thing is that sometimes our internal values or alignment with, even if we're speaking about our chakra system, it starts from the base, right? We need to have a level of security and kind of following the Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? Like the base things need to be covered first. If you think of a building and it doesn't have its foundations, can't start from building from the top floor. You need that to be aligned. And if the building is off from the base, it's going to look like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. So you kind of got to start there. And, the two base ones is your root chakra, but also then the sacral. That's like the second energy center, which is really important, which is why we're so excited to have you, on board, Kris, to help people get in alignment there. So they do have a sturdy foundation, because you have, the bottom chakras, which are like below the heart, the heart kind of being the center. Those are more grounding ones. And then as you get higher, is more of the vision and the goals and the self-actualization. But I think a lot of people want to start up there before they're actually rooted in their embodiment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely such it's important to think about, like, yeah, without that base, you can't actually develop the upper ones, and, like, that they have to stack on top of one another. Otherwise, it's not gonna work.
Could be like a little Jenga, when it kind of starts tilting and it gets a bit jagged, like there's no flow through. You want to have like a straight hole up the middle. So yeah, I think energy flows
Absolutely.
so much easier when it's when there's just kind of straight through line, rather than like these jagged pieces and things that aren't quite fitting. And there's a difference between having external alignments. Maybe your behaviors aren't matching your internal values, what feels aligned for you, but also your own internal alignments could be conflicting against each other in ways that you don't realize as well. So there's a lot of ways to kind of understand how we practice alignment, whether it's like through our actions and our beliefs and behaviors, and also like through our own um work. But I think that the biggest part is coming into stillness and embodiment with yourself to actually understand what's who you are at your core. And I think that really comes with listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so there's multiple different elements obviously to this journey. And one of the big pieces is actually just the nature and the natural environment we're going to be stepping into. And so I'm curious what role you see that nature playing, and like what role, like, I know there's also peak experiences planned, right? There's like cliff jumping and other things that like challenge us on a physical level. And so I'm curious how that wove into the design of the whole project.
I think that's the essence of the warrior. In order to, like, this is a journey of personal ownership, right? And when we're thinking about alignment and coming into our values and to the truest part of who we are, that's not an easy thing, because society and everybody is always trying to pull you in different directions and impart all of their beliefs and social constructs on you. And so really being able to stand for what you believe in and have that integrity does take that warrior energy. And a lot of times it can be scary to have the conversation where you pull someone up on something, or you say no, and you actually start to stand up for your truths. And so the warrior energy and these challenges are really about putting you into scenarios where you can come face to face with your fears, so that it is easier for you to stand true in what is most aligned for you. Um, it's kind of where that comes from, I think. And it's also to do with the liminal space that you're in, which is the initiation, the challenge, the pressure cooker, which is like, who are you? What are you really made of? Let's step into that, because we all have so much potential inside of us. We all are. Mick and I have been discussing this a lot, of like, we're not trying to fix or change anything. We're trying to come home to who we really are, to remember what we're made of and the power that we actually have within us. And we've forgotten. And so these challenges really pull it out of us, because it's like, oh yeah, that was in there all along. It's this fire has been awakened within us.
The fire has been litten. It's been litten. Yes, absolutely.
And I
Mick,
think
we've been having a lot of discussions. Maybe you have something to add to that.
I think the fire will be very ceremoniously lit in the opening of this container, this portal, this initiatory ritual, in the bush, in the South African bushveld, out in deep nature, where I think it is appropriate to really connect with the rooted being. And my experience as a creative facilitator has been always that if you're sitting in a boardroom somewhere with a group, it's really hard to get people to speak authentically and relate authentically. It's even hard for them to be in touch with their true nature in this very synthetic world that they're surrounded by, and the texture of glass and steel, and the dry air from the air conditioner and the low level buzz of electricity. But if you place us back in our home, that coming home, that space of deep nature immersion, uh, one has to work very little. In fact, you just have to create a little circle, and suddenly the wisdom emerges. People share insights with tremendous courage. They offer reflections. There's even a deep stillness in the space where the texture is soil and wood, and the smell of the bush, and the creaking of the crickets, and the sound of the river. Mm. It's always been a space of the emergence of profound wisdom that's carried in nature that we can easily access, because, of course, we're not separate from it. And so starting there and continuing to connect there throughout the journey is of paramount importance as one of the key transformative um, dynamics that will be at play. Um, and and nature offers us that, I think, across all of the chakras, all of the ways in which we can come to remember our true nature are all expressed somewhere through nature. And we'll start at the root and move from there into deeper connection with nature, and thereby remember our true nature.
I think it's really
I
beautiful
love
to
that.
pull from these lessons, especially going through to safaris where it's like this animalistic, like the survival instincts, the true, like raw wilderness there, and getting to witness them in their natural environments, and pull wisdom. There's so much wisdom in each of these animals, of the big five that are there, and being able to understand, well, what do they each represent? Like elephants are like community and loyalty, and similar with buffaloes, whereas like the lion is like the courage, but they're also very, very patient, and they really, the females collaborate, and like how do they do that? And like the lion like makes space for them, and they're the ones that, so it's really interesting how they all work together, and realizing there is so much about leadership that we can learn just from the animals, or just from the first part of the journey.
Yeah, I like to think about how much we learn from our dogs. Imagine how much we
Yeah.
can learn from all the other animals in the animal kingdom.
We can learn so much just by studying, like, even our fish, I'm sure.
Right? Like there's a reason why like different yoga poses are inspired by different animals, because they really say like this is the lesson that this animal has to teach us. Right? The lion will inspire patience and bravery, and like the snake will inspire I'm not sure.
Shedding
It's running out of my
skins,
head at the moment.
letting it go.
Shedding skins. Yeah, I guess we just left that year of the snake, right? We're all letting that go.
Yeah, we all felt that
Yeah.
one. It's like
Oh my God, we all felt that one. Whew. Anybody feels like charging forward in the year of the horse after shedding something last year that felt really heavy? Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Whew.
but just transformation, right, is so necessary to get rid of all that, which is exactly, this thing of the quest, the liminal space, the initiation. We're shedding the skins that we no longer need, and I believe they were all useful at times, protecting us. And we're just shedding the skin, and coming true to the layers beneath it, the core of ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to thank them. You got to see them as they leave, but also you got to move through it. Otherwise, you're not growing and expanding. And yeah. So if somebody is listening right now and thinking, okay, this all sounds lovely, but I don't think I'm a leader. I don't see myself as a leader. How could I use this in my life? What would you say to somebody who doesn't believe that they're a leader?
Well, I mean, aside from the obvious of everybody has a leader within them, because it starts, and this is why SoulQuest. It's actually a journey of 4 quests. then this is the first one, which is personal leadership. And so someone might not be like, we were talking about this idea of Starbucks today, or like just starting a Starbucks. There was a quote that he said, if I knew I was going to have like 2,000 locations around the world or whatever it is, I would never have started. I just thought I was starting one coffee shop and one Subway like stall, and that was it. And this is the thing, like we don't have to be like, oh, I'm the leader of a CEO, an organization, a community, or anything. It's like, actually, are you leading yourself? Like, how are you waking up in your morning? Are you developing your routines? Like when we start cultivating these habits of leadership within ourselves and being able to um, have that personal ownership and devotion to our lives and to a vision of what we want for ourselves, that's where it starts. That's where leadership begins, and anyone can do that.
I thought about this morning. Leah and I have been holding each other accountable to our morning routines. It's always good to have an accountability buddy. And so we check in the mornings, like, get your time on the mat meditating. Did you do your body thing? How did you spend your morning? And this morning I spent mine with a guitar at sunrise. And I was just thinking, my father and the leadership he's shown at home, how he would every day get up before the sun came up and put on his suit and tie, like his suit of armor, and spray on his cologne, almost like a um, smudging himself in preparation for the the office ceremony of work. Go sit in traffic to do jobs that, frankly, he didn't enjoy, and most people wouldn't. Not the job that anyone would really want, truly, but is a job that needed to get done regardless. And it was a job that put food on the plate and kept a roof over our heads. And so, his leadership there was tremendous, and it came from a place of wanting to be of service to his family. It also enabled him to be of service massively in his community because he had that security of work. But I thought about that in my context because here I was lazily allowing the sun to come up whilst I played guitar and drank my matcha, thinking about all the ways I'm self-actualizing and wanting to have my, to do the things that only bring me joy, to have this career that is just a perfect alignment of the things that I love doing and the things that can pay the bills. And what a tremendous privilege that is. And whether that's still being of service is the question. And I recognize that whilst my routine might be different to his, in terms of not getting up to put on the suit and tie and spraying on the cologne and sitting in the traffic, I have my own routine, which I need to do to nourish my being somatically so that I can be in alignment, so I can show up and be of service to whatever is required of me. And that's something that's ancient, really. It's a place you get to where you surrender to that which will be of service to the greatest whole, and you can only ever do what's put in your plate on your plate for that day. I've been reading the Bhagavad Gita at the moment, and that's a very clear through line there. It's just do the next right action. Don't worry about all the 1,000 other things that need to be done. Just focus on the next right action that's being presented to you in the moment, because all you have is the moment. How do you have to be to show up in that moment, to be of service to that moment, to even arrive in your day and ask, may I be of service? May this day be a day in which I am of service to the greatest number of beings possible. That level of service leadership is something that anyone can bring into their life at any stage. Right? It doesn't matter what space you occupy in which settings. It's who you are at your most generous. I'm living this life, and as an act of great gratitude and recognition for the incredible gift of this life, in response to that, may I please be of service. May this day present that which I can use my hands, use my will to operate on, such that it is in the benefit for the greater whole, greater good.
Mm. I think this too really speaks to why Bulangula is such a special place on the journey. Is the intention there is to to look at, how we can be of service. Hopefully in future iterations of SoulQuest, we hope to be able to give back to the communities we travel to. And although maybe on the first one it won't quite look like that, because it's more about going in and learning and connecting with them and becoming collaborators, um, but also being humbled by, you know, being able to understand the way that the differences between the ways that we live, and seeing, just like Mick said, like some people put on their cologne and they go do the job that nobody else wants to do. In these villages, they're still chopping wood and carrying water and tending to their homes. And like one of the initiatives that we'll do is go and spend a day um, with the women and understand what they have to do and the job that they have to do, and that helps their community run, that helps them get the clean water, that helps them light the fires that warm them up, and that is a noble job. And these women are looked at as leaders within their community because they hold so much power, um and so it actually can be quite simple leadership. Doing things with integrity really is all it takes.
That it's really the simplest things that are always overlooked, but the most powerful, right? Like, and the hardest to achieve.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, those were such gorgeous responses. Um, as we start to wrap up here, is there anything else that you want to share about Soul Quest, about this journey, this project? Anything else on your heart?
I'm just really excited to be able to collaborate with this, like, on this journey with you, Kris, and see you here in Africa, this potent place. There's just such a beautiful country, and there's so much to learn from this land. It's every time I have come here, I've just bowed down to it, and I feel like it's even I was just going through a journey landing here. It really just forces you to be in your fullest expression and just get rid of all of the things that aren't working, and it slaps you around a bit, kind of like Mama Ayahuasca or something. And she just always teaches, and so I'm really excited for you to come and meet her and travel on this journey with me. And I hope that um yeah, I think you have so much to share and so much wisdom to bring to the table with this unique perspective that you have in terms of pleasure and desire and leadership. So yeah.
Thank you.
I think the invitation that comes to mind for me is to also recognize that the story, the South African story, offers us so much insight for how we can be better together. Uh,
Mm.
and right now, we all could do with appreciating how we can be better together, and how reconciliation and telling a story, a new story of togetherness, should always be our aim. If we're aiming up, if we're seeing the smallest action we take or the biggest impact we're aiming to have as being something that's for the greatest good, then we shouldn't let the feeling of differences stand in the way. We should recognize that it's possible uh, to resolve those differences through telling a new story of togetherness. So no matter what people are doing, uh, I think the soul quest that we're all being called to right now is one of examining whether we are able to recognize the emergence of a new story, and not feel stuck in the old story of separation and segregation. And so, yeah, I invite people, wherever you are, whatever you're focused on in your life at the moment, to recognize where are there opportunities to start telling a story of togetherness. And
Thank
if that ain't
you.
Eros, if that ain't Eros, I don't know what is.
Oh my gosh, it is. Oh, yes. Thank you so much. Thank you both for sharing your wisdom. And also, I love watching your dynamic. I love watching like the same question asked to both of you is answered in such different but very like interwoven ways that really shows why you guys have chosen to be partners on this project and why like both of your minds combined is what makes this so special and what is going to make this so special. So yeah, thank you both for taking the time today to talk through all these amazing concepts. I feel very inspired. Yeah, I'm so excited to step beyond what we thought we were capable of, right? Like that's one of my favorite things in this world is to be like, okay, but what else? What else are we capable of? How far can we go together? And like this idea of the leadership first coming from like what we're doing, what we're experiencing inside and what we're bringing to the world, how we're being of service. Um, oh, yes. So thank you both for creating this journey with so much community and nature and intentionality and integrity and all in alignment with the warrior's path to help us feel our most alive and our most aligned in life.
And don't
Okay,
forget about all
so
the
if
fun
anyone
stuff
is
too.
absolutely,
We'll get
absolutely, it's
lots
going to
of
be so good.
joy,
Like this
lots
is
of pleasure.
a dream come true to travel with others, right? Even if you're like, I want to travel with a close knit group of people and just like have a great time. That's also what we're going to be doing. So yeah, if you want to join us, I believe there's one, maybe two spots left. So there'll be all the links down below. Grab that application, fill it out, come say hi, send us an email, and yeah, come join on this magical, mystical journey. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Kris.